I'm Tad Flaky,
I'm Lilibet Flaky.
and this is Pointless Global News. On today's show, a pill that might cure cancer might also make you want to barf.
Then I'll tell you about a lady who's thirsty for the local undertaker.
Finally, I'll report on the Florida man who's thirsty for a ferret. Now the details. When we dreamt of a magic pill that could cure anything, we weren't thinking of poo pills, also known as crapsules, but these little capsules packed with freeze-dried fecal matter have recently shown promise in treating everything, from advanced cancer to deadly liver disease. Some even say fecal transplants, in which the poop of a healthy person is transferred into someone else, could be the key to crushing it at the gym and reversing some signs of aging. Now, researchers in England are testing whether capsules, or if you prefer crapsules, I think I'll prefer that. Crapsules containing freeze-dried stool from healthy donors can uproot antibiotic-resistant bacteria hiding in patients' guts. Translation: someone else's shit could save you from a superbug. In the trial, 41 patients who had recently battled drug-resistant infections were split into two groups. One received 3 sets of these poo pills over 3 days, while the other was given placebos. A month later, those on the real treatment were found to have healthy donor bacteria successfully colonizing their guts, a sign that the pills may have fleshed out the bad bugs. It's all very exciting, said Dr. Blair Merrick, the lead researcher at Guy's and St. Thomas Hospitals in London. He went on to say, there's a real shift from 20 years ago when we thought that all bacteria and viruses were assumed to do you harm, but now we realize that they're completely necessary to our overall health. Superbugs, that is, germs that are resistant to antibiotic treatment, are expected to cause up to 39 million deaths globally by the year 2050. Microbiome researcher Chrissy Sergaki said that if the poo pills prove to be successful in further studies, fecal microbiota transplants, better known as FMT, could be the new prescription drugs. She went on to say we could potentially in the future replace antibiotics with microbiome therapies. That's the big picture, so there's a lot of potential.
You know the intestines are amazing things, Ted. People think they're just storage for stool. They're not. They're something they even call your gut brain. So
It is amazing.
it is
really
truly amazing.
So I understand you have a love story of a different kind.
I do.
Let's hear it.
Would you do anything for love? Would you do that?
Wait a second. You're not getting ready to sing that horrible Meatloaf song, are you?
I would do anything for love.
I knew it.
But I won't do that. By that, we mean stalk the funerals of complete strangers in hopes of catching the hunky undertaker's eye. That's what Daniela Senor did. After the Brazilian woman saw Apollo Scariot, the funeral director of a local funeral home, she knew she had to make him hers. However, the 33-year-old woman couldn't just approach Scariot and ask him out, for some reason. No, he had to make the first move, and Senor had just the plan to make it happen. She simply started attending strangers' funerals, hoping that one day Scariot would notice her. It's a harebrained plot, but the weirdest part of it all is that it worked. It took 2 years, but Scariot finally saw Senor throwing glances his way and asked her out. Earlier this year, the happy couple tied the knot. It just goes to show that you can find love even in the most morbid places, at least if you're crazy enough to stick with it. Our bizarre love story begins at the most romantic of locations, a graveyard. Some 3 years ago, Daniela Senor was attending a relative's funeral. Her attention, however, wasn't on the coffin being lowered into the grave. Senor couldn't tear her eyes away from the local funeral director, Apollo Scariot. Honestly, who can blame her? The man's hot and has a name like a fantasy romance novel's male lead. It was love at first sight. Senor resolved to make Scariot her own one way or the other, and she had to opt for the other way. For reasons that we couldn't find out, she couldn't just walk up to the man and hand him her number. She wouldn't do it. Maybe she was shy. Maybe she thought it'd be inappropriate to be amorous at a relative's funeral, or maybe she believes the guy should take the initiative. In any case, the funeral ended and Signor left, Apollo-less. However, she couldn't get him out of her head. So in an effort to woo the man of her dreams, Signor hatched a cunning plan. She would start attending strangers' funerals until he asked her out. Now, as strange as Signor's plan was, it's not that unhinged if you consider where she lives. Signor and Scariot both lived in Pinalzinho, a small town in southeastern Brazil with only about 2,800 residents. In the close-knit town, virtually everybody knows everybody. It's not at all uncommon to have apparent strangers show up at a funeral and bid farewell to a friend's neighbor's cousin's ex-roommate. So Signor started attending funerals every 3 months, even though she says she finds funerals extremely uncomfortable. But she was ready to bear the awkwardness for love. She said, "I used to think, I'll give the family a hug just so I can see him, you know?" Unfortunately for her, Scariot didn't attend every funeral. Many times she went to the somber ceremony for nothing. Other times he was there, but only physically. Scariot is a professional through and through, and his focus was always on making sure that the funeral went perfectly. Several times he exchanged a word or two with Signor, but she never registered in his mind. She was just a blur distracting him from his job. Yet after 2 years of persistent funeral crashing, Signor's efforts bore fruit. Scariot snapped out of his trance long enough for Signor to talk to him properly, catch his eye, and exchange phone numbers with him. In summer of 2024, the two started dating. It seemed they were made for each other, which is good considering how much time and effort Signor put into wooing the man. Imagine if he had turned out to be a complete a-hole. Finally, Scariot popped the question and Signor said yes. Their wedding took place in early May 2025. Now, weddings are a big deal in small Pinalzinho, and couples often make them elaborate affairs. It was the same for Signor and Scariot, but they decided to embrace the bizarre nature of their relationship. So they arrived at the wedding venue in a funeral hearse. Of course they did. That turned some heads and probably upset some people, but the couple explained why they chose the unusual ride for their big day. They told their story, and the locals have since embraced it, adding it to their collection of small-town folklore. Granted, they've received more attention than they ever imagined, but then again, how many times do you find love at a graveyard?
Oh, that's just beautiful.
Or it is beautiful. Remember when we were we did a graveyard tour in New Orleans?
Yeah.
And there were no suitable people hanging out in the graveyard, so I don't know what she did, but it worked for her.
Yeah, remember the guide said that in order to make sure the spirits didn't follow us out, we had to walk backwards out of the cemetery.
Walk backwards in and out.
And we all did.
We did.
You don't want to mess with the spirits, that's for sure.
Nope.
Finally, police in Jacksonville, Florida, are looking for a suspect who fondled a $650 ferret for some time at a Petland store and then shoved the animal down his shorts and walked out. It was reported that on May 27, the man browsed the ferret section of the store before he left. He began holding the crotch area of his shorts to support the ferret. A Petland store manager tried to chase him, but he couldn't get the license plate number of the van that he was driving. Although I doubt the ferret thief got very far with that ferret in his shorts, probably sinking its teeth into what the ferret thought was a human hot dog. And that's a wrap for another Pointless Global News. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Tad Flakey.
I'm Lilibet Flakey.
Stay pointless, my friend.